Hey there, thank you so much for stopping by to spend a few minutes of your day with me today. And I just want to start off this video by saying thank you for such a great reception of our first OpenMediaVault 7 video. The reception I got on it was just amazing, and I wanted to just say thank you for that. It really did inspire me to keep this video series going on a good, solid path as quickly as I can get each of the next videos out. So thank you again. In our previous OpenMediaVault video, we took a look at getting OpenMediaVault installed, getting our dashboard configured, and updating OpenMediaVault. We also made sure to change the admin password for security reasons and enable dark mode so that we don't burn our eyes out with the default light mode. This video will be a continuation of that video, so if you haven't seen it yet, you'll likely want to go watch that video before you jump into this one. Now, in this video, we're going to make sure that both of our drives show up in the dashboard, and we're going to create a file system on the drive that we're going to use for storage. Then we'll install OpenMediaVault Extras, or OMV Extras, the Docker repo, OMV Compose, and OMV Scripts. And after that, we'll create the necessary folders that our Docker setup needs to run. And then we'll actually install Docker, and we'll create a Docker user for security reasons. Then, in celebration of all of that hard work, we're going to deploy a Docker container using the built-in OMV Compose plugin, just to give us an extra feeling of accomplishment at the end. So, let's dive into this, shall we? So here we are on the dashboard from the last video, and the first thing I want to say is that I'm recording this on a new PC. There's a whole video coming out about that soon, and the dashboard was there on my first login, so this is so much better than OMV6 already. The first thing we're going to do here is click Storage and then Disks, just so we can make sure that the two disks that we set up in our previous video are still there, and they are, so we're good. So now we can move on by clicking File Systems. Here, we're going to click the blue circle with the white plus sign in it, and at this point, we're going to be asked what file system we want to use for that drive that we're setting up. Now, I like to use ext4 for these setups, but you could use Btrfs if you wanted to, or any of the other options that are there. But again, I'm going to use ext4 here. Now we're going to select the drive that we want to use for our storage. Now I've only got the one extra drive here, but you might have more depending on your setup, so choose appropriately. Next, I'll click Save, and the system will create the file system. After a moment, the process will complete, and we can move on to the next screen where we're actually going to mount the newly created file system. So our file system will be shown at the top, and the next area will allow us to choose at which point the drive being full that we'll start getting notification warnings letting us know that the drive is getting very full. So go ahead and select the percentage that you want to set that at, and if you want to, you can add some tags and then click Save. The screen will reload, and we'll click the check mark in the yellow banner to save the changes that we've made, and make sure you click the red confirm button if that happens to pop up. So now that we've got our drive and our base file system set up, we can actually move on to getting OMV Extras installed. And doing this will allow us to install Docker and Docker Compose into OpenMediaVault 7 with just a few quick and simple steps. So we're going to go to omvextras.org, of course, links in the description as always. And on the homepage, we're going to see an intro to OMV Extras, as well as kind of a weird looking link with a globe icon in it, but we'll come back to that here in just a moment. Now, if we look on the left side of that page, we'll see that there are a series of links, and you should definitely check those out if you've got questions about nearly anything OMV related, as this is a great resource of info for OpenMediaVault. Now, going back to the homepage of OMV Extras, we're going to go to that link that has the globe icon in the middle of it, and we're going to copy that link. Then we're going to go over to our favorite terminal app and SSH into our OMV server. I'm just going to enter SSH root at omv7.local and hit enter on my keyboard. Now, because this is the first time that I'm SSHing into this server from this computer, it's going to prompt me to make sure that this is actually the server I want to connect to. I'll give it the yes command and hit enter, and then I'll enter my password and I'll get logged in. Now, I'm just going to right click in the terminal window, and the script is just going to take off quickly and get the OMV Extras script and its dependencies installed. After a moment or two, it will say that it's complete and that we need to go back to our OpenMediaVault dashboard and press Ctrl-Shift-Enter to refresh the page appropriately. So let's go ahead and do that. Now we should see the OMV Extras under System in our menu. We'll click that and check the Docker repo checkbox and then click Save. The page will update and let us know when it's complete. Then we'll head back over to the menu on the left side of the page and click Plugins again under System. In the search bar on that page, we're going to type in Docker and we should get a few results. Now, because they all include OpenMediaVault in the name, I'm just going to call them what's after the dash in the name. So Compose, K8s, and Scripts. In this video, we're not going to install the KAS plugin, but we are going to install the other two by clicking them and then clicking the blue download button near the top of the page. Installing each one will end up with a connection lost and 500 error, but when we see that, we can just reload the page and we should be good to go. After each plugin is installed, we should see a green installed indicator next to it, letting us know that that plugin has been installed. So now that the prerequisites have been installed, let's head over to the services link in the left menu and then find the Compose link under that and click it. Then we're going to click Settings, and we should see 4 sections in here that need storage assigned to them. Make note of the first 3 sections so that we can create the shared folders with each of those names for ease of use in the moment when we get to that point. The Docker storage is predefined, so we don't actually need to mess with that one at all. Now, as I mentioned, we haven't created any shared folders for this, so let's go ahead and do that. And to do that, we'll head over to Storage and then click Shared Folders. Then we'll click the blue circle with the white plus sign in it, like we've done already a few times. And the first thing I'm going to do is create a folder called Compose. I'll assign the storage folder and file system that we created a moment ago, and I'll leave the permission settings where they are, but you can adjust that to your needs if they are different than the default settings. Now, you can add tags to this if you want to, but either way, click Save, and then we're just going to repeat this process for the backup and data folders. So at this point, we should have our 3 necessary folders created, and we'll head back to the Services menu in the left and click Compose like we did a moment ago. And then we'll assign each of those first 3 sections the storage that we just created. Then you can click the blue Save button at the bottom of the page, and once that is saved, you can click the check mark in the yellow bar across the top of the page, and then the red button in there to confirm. And this will save all of the settings that we just changed across the system. Now we'll click Reinstall Docker. Now I don't honestly know why it says reinstall and not install, but it is what it is, as they say. So you'll give this a moment, and that's really all there is to installing Docker and Docker Compose in OpenMediaVault 7. So now let's go back to our terminal window on our desktop. And if you close that window, just reconnect to your OMV server via SSH, and then run the command docker ps. And it should give you an empty table with just the Docker headers of container ID, image, command, and a few others. Now at this point, you can also run the commands docker-v and docker-compose-v to get the currently installed versions of Docker and Docker Compose. So for the sake of security, we're going to create a new user in OpenMediaVault that we can use for our Docker installation. Now this part isn't really necessary, but it is a good idea to not use your primary admin account to do anything other than just configure stuff in OpenMediaVault. So it is a good idea to have a Docker user for this setup, just again for a little bit of extra security. So we'll go back to our OpenMediaVault dashboard and click Users in the bottom left, and then we'll click Users in the submenu, and then again, we're going to click the blue circle with the white plus sign in it. Now I'm going to call my new user Docker user, and I'll give it an email address and password. Now the email address for this doesn't have to be a real one if you don't want it to be, but do with that information what you want to do. Once I've got that part done, I'm going to assign that user to a few different groups like Docker, OpenMediaVault admin, and OpenMediaVault config, and Samba share, but that last one might not matter. I'm just putting it there just in case. And of course, you can do your own research to fine-tune these groups based on your specific needs for this user. Now, I'm also going to check the box to disallow account modification on the account. This just is a preventative measure, and I do this just in case somebody does get a hold of this account. That way they can't actually modify it if they get in there. So again, it's not necessary, but it's an extra step that I like to take for security. Then we're going to click Save and wait for the page to reload, and then we'll click the check mark in the yellow bar across the top like we've done so many times, and then the confirmation button in the pop-up. Next, we're going to make sure that things look good by going back to our terminal window and typing in a couple of different commands. The first one is ID admin and then hitting enter. And the second one is ID Docker user, or whatever username you gave your Docker user. This way we can see the different UID and GID numbers for each account. Those are going to come into play later. So the reason we want to do this is because some Docker containers and the Docker Compose scripts that deploy them have a place for you to put those numbers in there for permissions-related settings in the deployment. Now, since we've made it this far, I mentioned this at the beginning of the video, but I think it's time to deploy a Docker container in our new OpenMediaVault setup. And we're going to do this with the OpenMediaVault integrated Compose setup that we also installed earlier. So in our dashboard, we're going to go to Services and then click Compose. Then we're going to click Files and then the blue circle with the white plus sign in it yet again. Now there are several options in here, but we're going to keep it simple for now, and we're just going to click Add. At this point, we should probably decide what we're going to deploy here, and I'm just going to deploy Linux servers DocuWiki just because it's super easy to deploy. So we're going to head over to the DocuWiki page on hub.docker.com, again linked in the description, and scroll down until we find the Docker Compose section. Go ahead and copy that section. You don't need the 3 lines or the 3 dashes at the top though, and then head back over to the OpenMediaVault dashboard. So go ahead and paste in the Docker Compose that we just copied into the file text area, and then make sure to enter a name for the container. Going back to the Docker Compose that we pasted in, there are a few things that we need to change. First, we need to change the PUID and PGID to those that are matched in our Docker user that we saw a moment ago. If you don't remember what those are, we can just get SSH back into our OMV7 server and then type in ID Docker user or whatever your username happens to be. And then you'll see the UID/PUID and GID/PGID that are 1000 and 100 respectively. So adjust the entries in the Docker Compose accordingly. Then go ahead and enter your time zone. And we're actually going to skip the volume section for now, as we'll need to go back and get that information from the shared folders section of our storage. We'll come back to that. But now let's take a look at the port section just before we get into anything else. Now, OpenMediaVault 7 is using port 80 by default for the dashboard. And even if we changed that to something else, we might want to use port 80 for something else in the future. So I'm just going to change port 80 to 8080 instead, but only on the left side of the line before the colon. Port 443 is optional, so we're not going to use it. I'm just going to comment it out and we're going to move on. Now, the restart policy is fine as it is. Unless stopped just means that if the server reboots or something crashes or whatever, the container should come back up on its own unless you've manually stopped it before the system crash or the reboot. That's all unless stopped means. So now we can scroll down and click Save. After the page reloads, let's head back to the storage and shared folders and look for the data folder that we created earlier. So now we can click the copy icon on the absolute path for the data folder, and then we'll go back over to the services and then compose. Then we'll click files and then the DocuWiki entry and the edit icon above. That's a lot of steps to get back there. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. Now we're going to edit that volume line so that the path is what we just copied, followed by /DocuWiki/config. Then we're going to scroll down and click save. Once the page reloads, we're going to click DocuWiki and then the up arrow that just activated right above there. We should get a virtual terminal window that shows the progress of the deployment. And as a side note, Portainer could really take a lesson from this. Like, I hate waiting for something to happen while I don't know what's going on in the meantime, and I'm just waiting and waiting and waiting. This at least gives us an idea of what's going on and what might be getting hung up. So I really wish Portainer would implement that back into their system. Now, once the virtual terminal window says end of line, you can close the virtual window and the status should change from down to up. Now, we're going to click these services under the Compose submenu on the left side, and we should see our container listed there with a bunch more information that we haven't seen before. What we want to do now is actually click the ports on the right side of that page, and your new container should load as an application in your browser. So we got a lot done in this video. We got Docker and its dependencies installed. We got Docker Compose installed. We created some folders. We created a Docker specific user, and we deployed a Docker container to verify that everything is working. So I think this is where I want to wrap this up. And again, I want to make these videos as consumable as possible. And this video is already getting pretty long. So I'm already working on the third video in this series, but I'm definitely interested in knowing what you guys would like to see me cover in this series for OpenMediaVault 7. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done that already. And of course, if you feel this video is worthy of either of those two things. Of course, if you'd like to support the channel in other ways, you can join my Patreon, you can join the Discord, and a few other ways that are listed in the video description. However, just a quick little side note, if you join my Patreon or become a channel member, you will get ad-free access to my content while still supporting the channel, and you can become a patron for as little as $1 a month. But none of that's obligatory. That's all completely up to you if you feel the urge and it makes sense for you. So with all of that said, thank you for spending a few minutes of your day with me today, and I'll talk to you in the next video.